This is Power Hour with Gabriella Power.
Hello and welcome to Power Hour. I'm Gabriella Power. Thank you for joining us. The Democrats are facing a major crisis. More than 2 million voters have left the party in the space of 4 years, according to the New York Times. Analyst Michael Prusa suggested that this isn't just a dip, but a potential death spiral for the Democrats. He said, "I don't want to say the death cycle of the Democratic Party, but there seems to be no end to this." Wow. And you have to wonder why the Democrats are losing so many registered voters when they've had talent as exceptional as this.
Dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare.
We've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. And I don't understand the point that you're making.
Yeah, America fiercely rejected those two after the damage they caused to America. But what about the next generation of brilliant minds coming through the Democratic Party?
If it walks like a duck and it talks like a duck, maybe it's a duck.
Democratic socialist. Do you think that billionaires have a right to exist?
I don't think that we should have billionaires.
Yes, AOC and Mamdani. Well, according to this expert analysis on MSNBC, these are the brave leaders who are destined to take the party forward.
Why are Democrats not, why are the polls bad? Why are they not breaking through? And I think it's a couple things. I think one is the people who are breaking through are brave, right? They talk like humans, they make the case, you know, and again, it's like Pritzker's chief of staff told me, it's not necessarily left versus center, it's fight versus cave. And the people who fight get support. And the people who cave or are mealy-mouthed or are, you know, very sort of corporatist-y, that crew, the crew that's afraid, cannot break through, does not appeal to voters. The question is, it's only going to be for people who really feel authentic, right?
Sherrod's never been afraid of his shadow.
Exactly.
He's always spoken his mind.
Chris Murphy, Sherrod Brown, Mamdani, these people, AOC, they're not all exactly the same politically, but they are the same in the fact that they're brave and they break through.
Joining us now is CJ Pearson, RNC Youth Advisory Council co-chair. CJ, it is great to see you again. Let's talk about the Democrats and the crisis that they're well and truly in. According to data published by the New York Times, between the 2020 and 2024 presidential elections, Democrats lost around 2.1 million voters. Over the same period, the Republican Party gained 2.4 million registered voters. Now, officially, there are still more registered Democrats than Republicans across the country, but that number is incomplete because blue states like California and New York allow voters to register by party, while reliably red states like Texas and Ohio do not. But for the Democrats, the decline is nationwide. We've got experts on MSNBC telling us that people such as AOC and Mamdani will help the party and take the party in the right direction. Good luck to them on that one. But CJ, what's your analysis of this data? Why are millions of people leaving the party?
Because we're so back, Gabriella, is what I'll say. But also, too, because I think people are frankly not buying what the Democrats are selling right now. You know, what we saw in the 2024 election among voters, 18 to 30 was a 20-point swing into the favor of Donald Trump, a Republican, unprecedented in what we've seen historically. And I think as we continue to see young people continue to come over to the Republican Party, come over to conservatism, we'll continue to see this gap between Republican and Democrat voter registration continue to grow. And I got to tell you, it makes a lot of sense. Democrats don't have a vision. They don't have anything that they actually have to sell. And Republicans are not just selling hope, but they're selling results. And the results are a stronger America, a better America for the future, but also the present.
Well, the Democrats are fighting against Donald Trump, even when it makes no sense. Now, Democrat strongholds such as LA and Boston are pushing back against ICE and deportations of illegals. Boston Mayor Michelle Wu has dared Attorney General Pam Bondi to follow through on her letters threatening federal action over sanctuary city policies. But to make a point, this Boston mayor, just about how serious she is, she made sure that this rally in Boston opened with singing.
Everybody, hoo-hoo-ya, hoo-hoo-ya.
CJ, I have to laugh. What is it with the Democrats and singing? At so many protests we see this being used. Is this really helping their cause?
It's not at all. It's actually nauseating here. But what personifies more just how sad the state of the Democrat Party is and that sad performance that we just watched? Here's the deal, and what Democrats don't understand is that the Republican Party was given a mandate by the American people to enforce our immigration laws when President Trump won resoundingly in 2024, not just the Electoral College, but a popular vote as well. And so this entire argument that what he is doing is not supported by the American people, or this is not what we voted for, is absolutely unfounded and completely detached from reality.
And another example of that is the DC crime crackdown, because guess what? It's actually working. Just a week into Trump's federalization of the DC police force, there's been an 8% drop in all crime. That's according to the DC Police Union data, which also shows that violent crime is down by 22%, property crime is down by 6%, carjackings also saw the biggest drop, down by 83%. Robberies, they're down by 46%. Car theft down by 21%, which is so strange, CJ, because I thought the Democrats told us that DC didn't have a crime problem, but even MSNBC is struggling to find residents that's going to suit their narrative because locals are actually feeling a lot safer. Look at this.
I feel safer. I do. It doesn't bother me at all. I just feel more military police presence there are. I just feel like I'm more inclined to be downtown more often than I usually am, especially in the evenings.
And if you take Metro bus, be aware you may see National Guard troops at the bus stops as well.
CJ, isn't it weird? More boots on the ground, it actually improves safety.
Who would have thought? Gabriella, you know, what's interesting about this is that the only people mad about this increased police presence are white liberals who live in communities that were already pretty safe, right? You know, what makes you think is that, you know, the left oftentimes talks about, you know, white privilege. Let's talk about white liberal privilege, the ability to go on the internet and say there's no real crime problem while black people are being killed in Southeast DC by thugs who have no regard for human life. President Trump is stepping in to actually show that black lives do matter when those on the left would rather be politically correct and not acknowledge the glaring problem that exists right here in our nation's capital. And so what I will say is not only do, you know, normal Americans who actually have two eyes and have two ears and are real with themselves will acknowledge that there is a real crime problem here in our nation's capital, but also black Americans are welcoming the fact that President Trump is stepping in to make America safe again.
Yeah, it's exactly right. Elon Musk is reportedly already giving up on his plans to launch his own political party, the America Party he was going to call it, and instead considering backing Vice President JD Vance if he runs for president in 2028. This is according to the Wall Street Journal. Now, JD Vance was asked about this today on Fox News, and he called the story fake news. He says he hasn't spoken to Elon Musk about it, but he did have some strong words for the tech billionaire.
If he doesn't like things the Republican Party is doing, my advice to Elon would be try to fix the Republican Party. Try to push it in your own way. Disagree with me all you want. Disagree with the President of the United States, but don't pretend that you can make a big difference with a third party. I think Elon would make a much bigger difference if he stayed loyal to President Trump's Republican Party. And if he had disagreements, express those disagreements from the inside as opposed to from the outside.
CJ, I'm all for JD Vance running in 2028, but Elon Musk has a complicated relationship with the Trump White House at the moment. Do you think it's a good move?
No, I think everyone wants to be a part of a winning team, so that headline doesn't actually surprise me. I think if Elon is smart, which he is very, very smart, he would support JD Vance to be our next president, which I think a lot of folks in the Republican Party are inching towards doing. I think JD was absolutely right in his comments. If Elon wants to change the state of this country, if he wants to change the state of the Republican Party, the way to do it is on the inside, not on the outside, pushing some far-fetched agenda that the American people will not rally behind.
Yeah, I agree with you as well. Now, Trump has announced that he's not going to be approving any new wind or solar projects. He posted on Truth Social, any state that has built and relied on windmills and solar power are seeing record-breaking increases in electricity and energy costs. The scam of the century. We will not approve wind or farmer-destroying solar. The days of stupidity are over in the USA. MAGA. Look, I really enjoyed watching Donald Trump absolutely slam Europe for its windmills a few weeks ago while he was over there. But how's this being received over in the US?
Here's the deal. I think that, the president raises some valid points, but I think that if we're going to, go into this new era of innovation, it's going to take an all of the above approach to energy. It's going to take wind, it's going to take solar. And so I think we need to figure out where that happy medium actually lies. And I think that discussion is ongoing. And I think the president is listening to people on both sides of this argument. But I got to tell you, again, when you look at data centers and also the AI race between the United States and China, it's going to take every bit of energy that we can muster. So I think this issue is far from settled here in the States.
Finally, Tulsi Gabbard has announced that the Office of the Director of National Intelligence will dramatically reduce its workforce and cut its budget by more than $700 million a year. Now, Tulsi Gabbard said in a statement that over the last 20 years, the ODNI has become bloated and inefficient, and the intelligence community is rife with abuse of power, unauthorised leaks of classified intelligence, and politicised weaponisation of intelligence. Now, this is very Doge-like of her, CJ.
It's very Doge-like, and I think it'll give a lot of comfort to folks who, may have thought that Doge was going away, that it is still alive and very much here to stay. What I will say about this is that for a long time, I think the American people have lost faith in the intelligence community, but every single day, Tulsi Gabbard gives us a reason to believe in it once again. I think this move by her is just yet another reason to do so. I welcome it, and I think many, many people all across this country are doing the exact same.
CJ Pearson, RNC Youth Advisory Council co-chair, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
It's time for Media Meltdowns, and this week the President of the United States hosted European leaders at the White House as he makes progress in bringing the Russia-Ukraine war to an end. It was a move that even a former ambassador under Obama had to admit was brilliant.
To bring all these European leaders together, in addition to President Zelensky, that was a brilliant, brilliant idea.
There you go. But the rest of the mainstream media started to panic. According to CNN's Abby Phillip, Europeans were rushing to the White House after Trump invited them. Well, that must mean that they have a 9/11 level of concern about Donald Trump.
I think it's extraordinary that this is even happening. I mean, think about the fact that you have a phalanx of European leaders getting on planes at a moment's notice to flock to Washington to give Zelensky backup in this meeting with Trump. That's a level of concern that I think some people say hasn't been demonstrated since 9/11. And it reflects a deep worry about Trump's decision-making.
Abby Phillip, that is completely insane. Joining us now is Senior Editor at Large at Newsweek, Josh Hammer. Josh, it is great to see you again. So the Trump administration invites European leaders to Washington, D.C. They were all there to show their support to bring a war to an end. Many of them were thanking Donald Trump. We heard from Finland's leader pointing out that in 2 weeks, Donald Trump made more progress in bringing the Russia-Ukraine war to an end than we've seen in the past 3.5 years. But that's not the story, according to Abby Phillip and, parts of the other leftist media. What did you make of what Abby Phillip had to say?
Look, at this point, Donald Trump could literally breathe. He could get up there, Gabrielle. He could literally get up there at the White House press podium and say, I support you breathing. And Abby Phillips and half the left-wing media would literally suffocate themselves on the spot. Because, I mean, it is literally whatever Donald Trump says, whatever he does, they immediately, instinctually do the exact opposite. But, you know, it was actually Mark Rutte, the General Secretary of NATO. Trump's actually been quite critical of NATO going all the way back to his first term. Well, Rutte actually said that Donald Trump was amazing at this meeting on Monday there. I mean, you had folks like Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer is a left-wing guy. Emmanuel Macron, no one's idea of a conservative there. I mean, sure, Giorgia Meloni was there. Trump's golfing buddy, the head of Finland, was there. But there were a lot of liberals actually at this meeting. And to a T down the line, you really saw no one offering anything other than praise to Donald Trump, because he orchestrated here a tremendous diplomatic demonstration. You know, the media just last week was flipping out that, oh my God, Donald Trump is meeting with the war criminal himself, Vladimir Putin. Oh my God, is he going to capitulate to this 21st century Hitler? And then he turns around and literally on the next business day, he pulls off one of the greatest demonstrations of White House diplomacy, probably in the entire history of the country. I mean, when is the last time that many national leaders have all been there under one roof, in this case, the White House? I mean, it hasn't happened, certainly in my lifetime. I would think over 100 years, actually, if I remember the stat correctly. So very, very, very impressive stuff. But as I said, literally anything he does, no matter what whatsoever, you know, the Abby Phillips gang, Rachel Maddow, that whole crew, they're going to criticize him no matter what.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. What we saw at the White House earlier this week, that was absolutely extraordinary. But we have heard from Democrat Stephen A. Smith. He's blasted the BS that we keep hearing from the Democrats as Donald Trump tries to get a peace deal. And he didn't hold back, as he really stated the obvious and gave some obvious truths, giving the Democrats a reality check that Donald Trump has done more than any administration to end world conflicts, and a reminder that this war started under Joe Biden's watch.
We ain't going to act like he caused this now. It's Democrats in office. It was Biden in office when a full-fledged war against Ukraine took place, courtesy of Russia's instigation, no matter what they try to say to Trump. It was Russia that invaded Crimea, and that was under the Obama administration. It was Clinton in office when you made a deal that disarmed the Ukraine and therefore weakened them, leaving them dependent on the United States. And now, here they are, having to beg for support that they're owed because of what we promised them as a nation. We promised them this. You owe it to the Ukrainians. You absolutely do. I'm not saying I like it. I'm not saying I like spending billions of our taxpayer dollars to them. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is promises made are supposed to be promises kept.
Now, finally, Josh Hammer, look, what did you make of what he had to say? It was refreshing to hear someone on the left actually give credit where credit's due.
You know, Gabrielle, it's funny. I'm a longtime sports fan, and back in the day, Stephen A. Smith would rant like that about like LeBron James or Tiger Woods or something on ESPN. So this whole kind of Stephen A. Smith delivering these political hot takes is kind of a whirlwind to me. Kind of makes me wonder what exactly he's gearing up for, frankly. I mean, is the political run himself? He's a very charismatic figure, certainly. I guess we shall see. He also actually has some interesting bipartisan cross appeal. So he is ostensibly a Democrat. I believe he's still a registered Democrat, but he's a very moderate Democrat, as we heard in that rant just there. He's maintained some across the aisle friendships with people like Sean Hannity, Mark Levin, and others there. Look, that was a pretty clear-eyed rant as far as I'm concerned there. I think it's no accident. As Donald Trump has been fond of noting, Gabrielle, and he's totally right to note this, Vladimir Putin has a habit of invading Ukraine when one party is in charge, when the Democrats are in charge. He swooped into Crimea in 2014 during the second Barack Obama term. He swooped in 2022 during the first, and praise be to God, the only Joe Biden term there. So, if Donald Trump was in power, as he likes to say, this obviously would not have happened there. But Donald Trump also, Gabrielle, let's not forget that for a very, very long time, essentially since his very first days in the Oval Office in 2017, the left and the media, but I repeat myself, they have excoriated, they have decried Donald Trump as some sort of warmonger, as someone who is trying to impose totalitarian hegemony all across the world there. He's trying to do XYZ things, World War III, blah, 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 blah. This is the greatest peacemaking, deal-making president of my lifetime, arguably, frankly, in American history. I mean, look at all these peace deals he's orchestrating. My goodness gracious. India and Pakistan, Thailand and Cambodia, Armenia and Azerbaijan. I was in Armenia 2 years ago. I saw that conflict up front and personal. It is a bitter, bitter, bitter conflict. The Israel-Iran ceasefire after the 12-day war, Rwanda, the Democratic Republic of the Congo. I mean, I could go on here, but this is extraordinary diplomatic prowess. I mean, you know, everyone from Trump to Marco Rubio as Secretary of State and on down the line there, just doing an absolutely phenomenal job, which is why if you are an intellectually honest Democrat, which Stephen A. Smith is, you really just have to kind of tip your hat at that point and say, job well done. I mean, let's see what happens with Russia, Ukraine. That's the big elephant in the room. Let's see what happens there. But on the other hand, if you're not an intellectually honest Democrat, if you're just a total left-wing hack like an Abby Phillips, well, we all saw that.
Well, let's talk about Marco Rubio. He's revoked more than 6,000 student visas for overstays and crimes, and that includes support for terrorism. Around 200 to 300 people have engaged in behaviour such as raising funds for Hamas. Now, Josh, there's still a long way to go in terms of stamping out anti-Semitism, but this administration is really not mucking around.
So there's multiple things going on here with these student visas being yanked. On the one hand, it's black letter immigration law here in the United States there, and liberals would challenge what I'm going to say, but what I'm going to say has been the immigration law for over 200 years here in America, which is that if you are not a citizen, your status can be revoked at any time for any reason, period, full stop, end of story. There was a very, very long line of U.S. Supreme Court cases holding exactly that there. So the notion that we actually need a reason in order to yank your visa, especially if it's a shorter term visa, like a student visa, if you're not here in a green card, the notion that we need any kind of specific reason is actually contrary to black letter immigration law. But as the case may be, a lot of these folks, probably all of them actually, they have very good reasons to have their visas yanked there because they are in active support of United States State Department recognized foreign terrorist organizations, whether it's Hamas, Hezbollah, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and on down the line there. There is zero reason, literally zero, not one, two, one, literally zero reason, period, full stop, end of story, why any single person who is not a U.S. citizen who supports a U.S. recognized foreign terrorist organization should be here on American soil. I would actually, Gabrielle, frankly, go even further than that. And I would say that even if you are a U.S. citizen who is engaged in active support there, if you are trying to raise funds for foreign terrorist organizations, if you are an active support there, I would actually go so far as to say that we should strongly consider going down the path of actually denaturalizing citizenship for naturalized citizens. That's a whole nother conversation there. The final thing that I'll just briefly add there, because we are talking here about student visas, I think part of kind of this nationalist, populist, MAGA, America First approach to higher education in general is coming around to the idea that America should not be involved in the game of educating the future leaders of our leading adversaries. I think back to when I was in university at Duke University in North Carolina, a shockingly high percentage of my classmates were Chinese nationals. I actually took Chinese language for 3 semesters there, and pretty much all my classmates were Chinese nationals. Why exactly were we doing that? Why exactly were U.S. taxpayer dollars going to funding the future leaders of America's literal #1 geopolitical foe? It frankly makes no sense whatsoever. So whether it's that or whether it's active support of groups like Hamas there, I think Rubio is absolutely unequivocally doing the right thing here.
Absolutely. Josh, I want to talk to you about LA, because in January, we saw LA battle through one of the most destructive fires in California's history. And the disaster, of course, was made worse because of the incompetence of its leaders. We had Mayor Karen Bass and California Governor Gavin Newsom. We know that 12 people lost their lives. Thousands and thousands of homes were destroyed. Where was Karen Bass? Well, she was enjoying herself at a cocktail party in Ghana. She ignored the National Weather Service warnings of extreme fire weather conditions on January 3. She flew to Ghana on a junket the next day, and by January 7, LA was going up in flames. And of course, when she returned, we all remember her bravery and her message to Angelenos.
You owe citizens an apology for being absent while their homes were burning. Do you regret cutting the fire department budget by millions of dollars, Madam Mayor? Have you nothing to say today? Can you back up, boss? Appreciate it. Have you absolutely nothing to say to the citizens today? Elon Musk says that you're utterly incompetent. Are you considering your position?
Nothing. She said absolutely nothing. She just ran away from the cameras, just showing what a weak leader she really is. And it was quickly revealed that Karen Bass cut the fire department's budget by almost $18 million ahead of those wildfires. The reservoirs were sitting empty, firefighters were running out of water, and the fire chief at the time, Kristen Crowley, admitted on live television that Karen Bass failed her and failed LA.
And I tell you, that's why I'm here. So let's get us what we need so our firefighters can do their jobs.
Did they fail you?
Yes.
Well, Karen Bass then fired Kristen Crowley, but the ex-fire chief is now taking legal action against Karen Bass, claiming that she was the scapegoat for the city's response to the wildfires. Now, part of her statement says, as the fire chief for nearly 3 years, I advocated for proper funding, staffing and infrastructure upgrades to better support and protect our firefighters and, by extension, our communities. The lies, deceit, exaggerations and misrepresentations need to be addressed with the only thing that can refute them, the true facts. Now, the legal claim also says that Karen Bass made multiple false claims justifying the removal of Kristen Crowley as chief, including suggestions that Crowley sent 1,000 firefighters home. Josh, how is this going to play out? I know there's a lot of anger still in Los Angeles directed at Karen Bass over the fires.
Well, Gabrielle, I know that all too personally, actually. So I live in Florida, not in California, but my wife and I have friends actually who lost their home. In fact, we actually were at a wedding in Santa Barbara, California, just in May for a couple who got married that weekend. They literally lost their home just 4.5 months prior to their wedding day in the Palisades fire there. And there are all too many stories like this. It was just a horrific thing. But that Karen Bass video, by the way, where she just refuses to answer the questions there.
Yeah,
I remember watching that like it was yesterday, actually. I mean, absolutely astonishing stuff. I mean, it's so awkward. I mean, literally just like standing there, just, I mean, you can shake your head, you can walk away there, you can kind of like put your hand up to the camera, but I mean, like, don't just like stand there. I mean, that is political malpractice 101. Now, Crowley, the ex-fire chief, is interesting because at the time, a lot of the conservative media here in the United States was talking about how Crowley was actually the first avowedly, I believe, homosexual, lesbian fire chief of any major city in the United States. There are a lot of folks in conservative media were talking about how this was a DEI hire, and that kind of led to the fire there. Now we're starting to learn a slightly different version of former fire chief Crowley there. I will be very curious to see where this particular lawsuit goes. What I do know is that Karen Bass is worse than nothing, that she is horrific. I mean, she was a backbencher Democrat in the U.S. Congress. She was in the House, and she was an absolute nobody when it comes to legislation, a total backbencher there. Then she goes into the mayor's office, and we've now literally seen L.A. go to probably the lowest point in its entire fairly illustrious actually history as a city there. So look, we'll see what happens there, but it's a very interesting turn from Ms. Crowley, who kind of went from the punching bag of conservative media here to now being something of a hero there. I'll be very curious to see that, as Gabrielle, where this lawsuit goes.
I completely agree with you about your assessment of Karen Bass. You know, what she's done even since then. She's been against ICE. While there have been riots in Los Angeles a few months ago, she was insisting they weren't violent, and we just saw so much violence being played out. She's such a joke. And frustratingly, rather, for residents in LA, Karen Bass is delaying the after-action report on the Palisades fire, and she's delaying it until the ongoing federal investigation into the cause has been completed. But people in the community are just so sick of this, sick of the delay, and need answers about the city's response. It's been 7 months now, and they're still waiting.
Yeah, there's absolutely no reason to do this other than just pure obfuscation, right? I mean, she can kind of claim this procedural reason over waiting for the feds to release XYZ thing before we release our local finding there. That is a total red herring. There is absolutely no reason whatsoever why the municipality of Los Angeles, the county of Los Angeles, cannot release their findings prior to the Trump Pam Bondi DOJ. That frankly makes no sense whatsoever. But by the way, Gabriella, I think it's probably an appropriate time to remind the audience here, you know, this is actually not the only fire in recent years here in America that we are still awaiting some sense of an explanation here. I mean, it was the Maui, Hawaii fire roughly 2 years ago in the year 2023, where, if I'm not mistaken, that was by some estimates, because we actually still don't know how many people died in the Maui fire. Some people estimate that was actually the single deadliest fire in American history, at least since the Great Chicago Fire of the late 19th century. So this is not the first time that we've seen something like this there. I suspect what's actually happening here, Gabriella, is frankly Occam's razor. The most simplest explanation is usually the right explanation, which is that these are politicians who are literally just trying to cover their behind by any means necessary there. I'm very happy that the Trump Pam Bondi DOJ is on the case, but again, there's absolutely no reason why the city and county of Los Angeles should be trying to appeal to the feds in order to evade responsibility. That frankly is nothing less than a glaring middle finger to the voters of Los Angeles County there. And the voters of Los Angeles County had any sense in them whatsoever there, they would vote these bums out of office ASAP.
Absolutely. Josh Hammer, Senior Editor at Large at Newsweek, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks as always, Gabrielle.
A former butler to King Charles has given a candid new interview about life inside the palace and poked major holes in Prince Harry's memoir, Spare. Riley Sullivan is a lifestyle reporter here at skynews.com.au, and he's always across the latest celebrity headlines. Riley, great to see you.
Lovely to be here.
Okay, so former butler Grant Harold has spoken out about Prince Harry. What's he revealed?
Yeah, this is a really interesting update. So it's kind of funny, at the moment we have two upcoming memoirs from former butlers. The first one, the Paul Burrell book we talked about a couple of weeks ago, and now there's another book coming out from Grant Harold. He spoke to The Telegraph earlier this week, and it was very interesting, particularly because he worked for King Charles at Highgrove and at Buckingham Palace between 2004 and 2011, which is a really important period when you think about the monarchy now. You know, those were the years when Kate and Will were getting together and getting serious. That was when Charles married Camilla, and that was really sort of one of the crucial points in this interview. He talked about Harry's relationship with Camilla during that period. And of course, if you remember from Spare, that was a huge source of contention, was, you know, this tension with Camilla, Harry and William not wanting Charles to marry Camilla, you know, this sort of seething resentment of Camilla and distrust. And Grant Harold said, look, you know, I was there, and he didn't see any of that. He said that they all got along very well, and that when it came time for the wedding, that Harry and Will were very excited about it. They decorated the car when they were heading off on their honeymoon, and it was all quite friendly. So an interesting update. I think it's that old saying, recollections may vary.
And another revelation from Grant Harold was the close relationship between Princess Catherine and Harry's former girlfriend, Chelsea Davy. Meghan Markle is not going to like hearing about this. What did he have to say?
Yeah, exactly. I think this is sort of an awkward line, and it was an interesting sort of insight as well, because Chelsea was very much, I mean, she could have been the Duchess of Sussex.
Yeah.
That was Harry's most significant relationship before he met Meghan Markle. They were on and off for about 7 years. Again, during that period when Grant Harold was there, you know, in those rooms. So he did know them all quite well. And reportedly, you know, Kate and Chelsea got along very well. She approved of Chelsea as a match. And I think there was probably a time there where they probably thought this would be the Fab Four. This would be sort of Harry's, you know, chosen partner. And then I guess, you know, history had other ideas and it fizzled out. But I thought it was quite interesting, actually, because, you know, when we talk about the Chelsea-Davy relationship, and also when he dated Cressida Bonas after that, both of those relationships fizzled out because those women weren't interested in royal life. You know, they were both aristocratic. They knew what it's like to be a royal, and being a royal is not easy. It's hard work. You give up your privacy. You give up so much of yourself, and it's really a pretty, you know, thankless job most of the time. And I think that they understood that. Cut to meeting Meghan Markle, you know, and it wasn't like that. She didn't, and as history shows, she found out very quickly it was not what she thought it was.
Yeah, and we all heard about it, didn't we? Wouldn't it be what a different path it could have been? Harry would still be in England if he stayed with Chelsea. But there we go. Prince William and Princess Catherine have begun renovating their new family home, Forest Lodge. When will the family be moving in, do we know?
Yeah, well, reportedly, Will and Kate and the family could be moving in by Christmas time. So renovations are underway at Forest Lodge. We now know that this is the home they've chosen. It's their forever home. There's been some documents filed with the local council for some sort of small alterations. I think there was something about a fireplace and a couple other kind of things. But The last time this property was renovated was 2001, so I'm sure Kate is probably want to get in there and completely overhaul the whole thing. I mean, 2001 was not a great time for interiors, so, so I think it's going to be, you know, a big renovation. But it is their forever home. I'm sure this is where they're sort of planning to stay. And I was surprised actually looking at the photos of Forest Lodge, how much it actually looks like their other property, Anne Mahal, which is their country home in Norfolk. It's kind of like the same house. It's this sort of brick-fronted style home. But yeah, it sounds like it's all kind of moving along quite quickly at Forest Lodge.
Okay. Meghan Markle, she shared a new video in the kitchen for something, you know, different, cooking up pasta with a very unique ingredient. Let's just take a look.
Shine extra bright. Can't you hear the music of a million?
Okay, Riley, what's the reaction to this been?
Interesting. I think this is typical Meghan. I think she's trying to go for something a bit more organic, but it just looks so insincere. You know, she's set it up. I mean, I'm imagining she's got a crew around her, you know, that are setting everything up for her, and then she's filming it, you know, in a $30 million mansion.
Yeah.
Notice that she's got to get in the wine at the end. You know, it's got to be a plug. It can't just be a post. It has to be a plug. And got to remember, you know, the People's Duchess, $280,000 of jewelry on. She's got her Cartier bracelets.
It's just too much.
It's too much. I think she just needs to relax a bit and just, you know, record.
We've been hoping that for a long time.
Yeah.
It's not happening. So apologies to everyone that we keep playing her content. we should have a ban or something. Look, finally, a relative of the royal family has made an extraordinary claim that the late Queen Elizabeth once refused to cut the ribbon for a new airport terminal over a check-in mishap. So tell us about the Queen reportedly putting her foot down. What happened?
This was quite an interesting story. So this was Lord Ivor Mountbatten, who's a relative of the Windsor family and was very close to the Queen. He recently revealed that the Queen was once so furious about a mishap, and the mishap was he was heading up from Bristol, so it was Bristol Airport. He was heading up to Scotland for a shooting weekend with the Queen, which was, you know, one of the things she loved. She loved to hunt. That was sort of her main pastime. And when he went to check in with the guns, the shooting guns, it was all kind of taken off him because of, I guess, security, and there was a miscommunication. So he arrives at Balmoral and he hasn't got the guns, and she's like, where are the guns for this shooting weekend? And she was furious because I think with the Queen, you kind of didn't get between her and her sort of favourite pastimes.
Right.
And reportedly he said that she was so annoyed about it that she said, well, they've recently asked me to open this new terminal. I'm not going to do it. So, and you can look it up. In the end, Princess Anne opened the new terminal instead of the Queen. And reportedly it's because she was so furious that they took her guns off her.
There you go. Riley Sullivan, thank you so much for joining us. Great to talk to you.
Always.
And that is Power Hour. Thank you for your company. We'll see you next week. Make sure you subscribe to Sky News Australia on YouTube.